Imagine waking up to find that the dollars in your wallet have lost their value overnight. Could the U.S. be hurtling toward that reality? In our President-elect Trump's threats against BRICS nations, exploring alternatives to the U.S. dollar for international trade, Trump's 100% tariff warning appears aimed at maintaining dollar dominance at the same time. I believe the dollar's fate has already been finalized. However, it's more than likely that this approach could do more harm than good, not just to the global economy, but to everyday Americans. So in this video here, I want to highlight 3 critical reasons why Trump's tariffs ultimatum might backfire. The future of the U.S. dollar hangs in a very unsettling position. And the first, worth mentioning, is that global trade dynamics have already shifted. And the second one, tariffs or excess of tax, is bound to hurt Americans more than it will our so-called enemies. And last but not least, it's unfortunate that a dollar-dependent world is already on bad footing because this instrument here has already lost over 98% of its purchasing power. And that's not a good thing at all. And this is something worth talking about. All right, so I want to take a quick minute to share some thoughts in reference to the other side of all this tariff talk that Donald Trump has put out there over the last couple months to other foreign nations deciding to shift their stance on holding the Federal Reserve note, as well as participating in the traditional Western-dominated banking structures, and how regardless of the information being put out there, in my personal opinion, there's no way that the West will be able to hang on to the reserve currency without some type of radical policies as well as approaches to doing such. And at the end of the day, no matter what, the truth remains, our purchasing power has already vanished. So while they're trying to stick it to our enemies, ultimately it's going to come back to hurt those that work, save, and invest in a currency that was created to fail from day one. As always, if you guys want to hear more of these little short takes, definitely hit that thumbs up button to show your support for the channel. And then more importantly, drop a comment down below. Let me hear your thoughts on this matter and what are you thinking relevant to the tariff situation. And then also, if you're new, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a deep dive when these videos are put out every couple of days or so. But the very first thing worth talking about happens to be the global trade dynamics and how they're shifting away from the US-led influence. And so it's no coincidence that the BRIC nations are not a group of nations to take lightly. You see, together, they represent nearly 41% of the world's population and contribute to about 31.5% of global GDP. So that basically surpassed the G7 share. And let's not forget that China alone accounts for about $450 billion. It also leads the world in imports, outpacing America's sheer volume alone. And so Trump's threats could inadvertently accelerate a shift already underway, where countries have been diversifying away from the dollar for close to a decade now. And it all began to speed up as a result of the excess trillions brought into existence under Donald Trump's watch because of COVID. And so the best way of looking at this is to picture the global economy as a high-stakes poker game. And the U.S. holds a powerful hand, which is the dollar, but the BRICS have been slowly accumulating a large amount of chips. So instead of strengthening this position, Trump's tariff threats resemble flipping the table frustration, which is alienating players and risking isolation from the game entirely. And one of the biggest parts not being talked about much is how tariffs could impact Americans. And it's very probable that tariffs would hurt Americans more than it actually hurt the BRICS nations. And so the irony of Trump's threats is that they could backfire spectacularly on the U.S. economy. And so while sanctions on countries like Russia and Iran have limited trade ties with America, China, which is a critical supplier of manufacturing, electronics, and consumer goods, stands to lose much more. So yet Americans will pay the ultimate price because it will drive up the cost of goods while also disrupting supply chains and further deepen the deindustrialization, which ultimately undermines the U.S. manufacturing and the middle class stability altogether. Because mind you, the moment the United States exported all of our manufacturing jobs was the moment that our country became a consuming nation, not a productive nation. And as of right now, America's not in a place where we have a plan to fall back on, because in the manufacturing as well as the service sector, there's been more layoffs over the last several years, which to me is a sign that the current structure for having a capitalistic society in and of itself is changing to where it's no longer affordable for companies in America to continue to compete with China, as well as other Asian nations where labor is more plentiful and the cost of obtaining that labor is a lot cheaper. And so this whole tariff thing can be looked at as a person that's burning a bridge, which they want to go back and forth, as well as to obtain all their goods and services by using that road. And so sure, by destroying that bridge or restricting access to that bridge, you might cut off your rival's access. But in doing so, you're disrupting your entire world as well, because you also use that same road. And so in this case, Americans could face skyrocketing prices and a shrinking purchasing power because the cost of everyday goods and items would have to go up for whatever's manufactured here in America. And then the most probable outcome is that people will go without a lot of things that they're used to, because it'll really force people to have to make some tough decisions as to what they're going to either substitute or just go without, which then puts more stress on manufacturers because the demand for those goods may not necessarily be there. So that would mean more layoffs at the end of the day. And so not only could these tariffs disrupt the access to our country back and forth as far as importing goods, but it also limits our ability to send goods over there, because it's good to say all those nations that are being taxed, they're just going to increase the taxes on American-made products that's sent overseas. So it's basically a tit-for-tat war where there'll be no winners. And then last, the primary catalyst we're talking about is the fact that a dollar-dependent world has already become a ticking time bomb. And so at all the heart of Trump's rhetoric is a refusal to address the real systemic flaws of this fiat system. You see, the US dollar's dominance, it all hinges on trust and value, and the trust has been eroding from decades of inflation and debt that has led to mismanagement of the one true gift that America had, which was dollar supremacy, because we had the reserve currency. But unfortunately, since the dollar was unpegged from gold back in 1971, its purchasing power has plummeted over 98% relative to gold. So meanwhile, the BRICS aren't going to sit around and wait for that 98% to become 100%, to where they too also lose out on having held U.S. liabilities as reserves for their role in the monetary system. And so it's a no-brainer that the BRICS have to begin experimenting with alternatives to the system. And that means whether it's a commodity-backed payment structure, whether gold is included or oil or silver or something like that. But ultimately, whatever their strategy is, they will be eventually rolled out either before or after there's some type of systemic event. It's going to ultimately reduce the reliance upon the dollar. And that's ultimately one of the biggest problems behind these tariffs, is the fact that you're forcing nations to make some tough decisions. And Donald Trump is not even president as of the recording of this video. And so a good way of zooming out and really looking at this whole scenario here is imagine a hot air balloon that's kept afloat by faith alone. See, the US dollar is that balloon, and Trump's tariffs threaten to puncture a hole in that balloon. And so without a shift toward a more stable foundation, like a decentralized standard that's hedged upon something and built upon something that's sound and true, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be a gold standard, but it has to be something that's tangible and real that the rest of the world recognizes has value as well, we have very little hope. We'll either lead to air seeping out slowly, or it'll be one big explosion. That balloon's inevitable crash could devastate the global supply chains as well as a financial system. The question is, what is the real solution, given we're so far along this destruction path because of fiat currency and all the debt built on top of this global monetary structure? Rather than clinging to a failing system, it'd be ideal that the U.S. could lead the way in adopting some sound monetary reforms before it's too late. Because as of right now, all the talk come out of Washington, as well as a Trump regime, has nothing to do with sound practices. It's more so about adopting current trend, which takes us even further down the digital pathway, which is a part of the mess we're in now, because there's nothing tangible behind it. And in a best case scenario, or even a far-fetched pipe dream, it'd be ideal if we had a decentralized gold standard with 100% reserve backing, which would be a good way to establish trust if that was something of importance to our politicians. But unfortunately, it's not. But based upon history, the best way to begin reining in this mess that's been created is to restrict our government altogether by limiting their ability to borrow and spend excessively without any type of repercussions to their actions. And because I don't expect them to do the right thing, I have very little hope that Donald Trump will do anything outside of the ordinary or what's already expected of him, which unfortunately has nothing to do with making America great again. But then again, to each his own. But it's unfortunate that the tariffs seem like a bold strategy, but history warns us that they're more likely to hasten a dollar's decline to protect its dominance. What's clear at this point is that the global economy is a real crossroad, and the U.S. must adapt or risk being left behind. And like I've always said, there can be no financial future in a Federal Reserve note, because we know how this always ends. So therefore, it's up to you to protect and preserve your own financial future, because no president in D.C. is going to be able to do that at this current moment, because it's too late. So whether it's tariffs, a Bitcoin reserve, the Doge Department trying to trim off some of the excess of spending, we still got $36 trillion that needs to be dealt with. And unfortunately, there will be no growth in a world where fiat currencies, i.e. debt-based currencies, are still the center point of our financial universe. And so therefore, it's highly probable that Donald Trump, whether you believe he has good intentions or not, he's ultimately going to fail at putting purchasing power back into your pocket. And so once again, a lot of hot air in a balloon that's going to burst eventually. But then again, he's telling the people what they want to hear, so majority of people buy into it. But anyway, this is just my 2 cents on the matter. I don't think the tariffs will work. I don't think Doge is going to be able to execute their cost-cutting agendas, just like I know that there's no way of paying off that $36 trillion plus. So therefore, they're going to add more to it. And the last thing I'm sure you will want is to be holding the bag of a lot of these at a time that the world's moving away from them and our government continues to spend, and therefore you continue to lose even more purchasing power of what's left in this note. So that's just my 2 cents on the matter. As always, don't want to just tell you about the problems our nation faces and the broken promises that are bound to come without leading you some strategies and hopefully some suggestions on things you should consider. And the most important one would be to create your own standard where you can rely upon yourself to protect and preserve your own financial future, because there's no one coming to save you when stuff hits the fan. Ultimately, if we know that the current administration is going digital, you might want to make sure you got some insurance against the fiat currency by going back to what is true, tried, and tested. And of course, that's sound money. And if you have interest in getting involved in the game directly, and then joining the Silver Team could be a good way of merging a hobby, an investment strategy, as well as a business opportunity into one by becoming a member of the Silver Team, where you get a chance to dollar cost average into silver monthly by setting up auto ship, where you can allocate how much silver you want sent directly to you, and then set up your own bullion store where you can then share your information with others so that you can become a distributor of silver yourself and also benefit from the opportunity of putting weight in people's hands, trying to be the solution that we need at this current moment, given all the debt. And then on the back end of that, whatever proceeds you earn, take it and then buy more silver, completing what I call the complete silver cycle. of saving, earning, and then restacking. So if you're interested in finding out more, click the link in the description at mysilverteam.com and get all the information you need. And feel free to join me there. We'll definitely love to work with you. And then on the other side of that, if you're more into gold, the best opportunity, in my opinion, to get affordable gold that anybody can afford for less than about $5 a unit would be the gold-backed notes, which are 24-karat polymer-infused notes that offer people a chance to protect and preserve their fiat currency in smaller denominations in something that cannot go to zero because gold doesn't do that. But anyway, just sharing some information with you. If you want more about the gold notes, just click the link in the description. Go to buygoldnotes.com. Check it out. Let me know your thoughts. And more importantly, if you found value, hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment, take this and share it so more people can get an alternative perspective as to what's really going on here rather than just listening to the mainstream media, because they have every reason to give you untruthful information, because that's how they keep everybody hurled up in the financial markets where they're able to profit off of your investments through fees and things of that nature. But anyway, just drop us some information, drop a comment down below. I'll catch you guys later.